In a previous video, I've discussed the importance of paths, but I've never really given an in-depth explanation as to the reasoning behind paths. Now, paths are there to serve a purpose. One of the purposes is access for maintenance, as with this one here. It goes all the way down to the bottom into the orchard, and it goes all the way back up to the Anderson shelter and the secret garden up there. And that is serving two purposes. One purpose is, and the main function is, to be able to maintain that edge and maintain the grass between it. The other reasoning behind it is that I get to go behind borders, which you wouldn't normally do. Now, normally that border would be viewed from the back end there, not from where I'm stood right now. So it creates interest. It forces you through. You get what is commonly called, and this is a David Stevens, who's a great designer. It's his phrase. It causes a pinch area, which is basically something that forces you through like that, and then you come out into this this sort of area here, which is quite nice. It opens up. I think that's what I'm trying to say. So it's a path causing a reason to be there. Now, I can also walk around this area here, and we'll do a little walk round. And this brings you round here. Eventually, this is going to be, it is the secret garden now. I call it the secret garden now. Although the secrecy is going to be once the bamboo gets bigger, once that viburnum ritidiphyllum gets bigger, and the other shrubs and the other bamboos up there, once they do their thing. Remember, Fargesias. Always look for Fargesia bamboos. But back to paths, because that's the reason for this. Now, another reason, look, we're at the back of the shack here. And that reminds me, I've still got to paint that black. Anyway, so that's another story. So this here is an access path as well, and it's a maintenance path. So from time to time, I'm going to need to maintain this shack that I built. And remember, I've only been here 2 years, so again, this was a thing that I've put up. It was a build of passion, and I think it's looking great, but it needs access. We need access to do it. So that path is there for that very reason. So paths can be made out of different things. In this case, this one's a gravel path, topped with gravel. It's got a base that's more chalk than it is gravel. And I've simply edged it with this stone that I had available, lying around, and I've just simply used it here. You don't just have to use that, you can also use that sort of thing, which is a tree I took from elsewhere. Another place had been chopped down, I took the opportunity and I put it there. So it's lining the path. So this path here takes you, there's another reason for it, takes you down there. So that path there is an interesting path that takes you down there to the shack and allows you access to it. And while we're here, we might as well get up on the deck and show you how we get back off the deck. And again, it's another type of path. It's a deck and a boardwalk. So the boardwalk allows you down into the other parts of the garden, but also allows you to view this border. So that's the boardwalk border and then the owl border. And it allows you to view that. So another reason for a path. So from there, we go to here. Brings you to here. And this is another path. It's got to be here because I've got to allow visitors and myself ways to get around the garden. And this is one way to get around. So this just takes you between two other borders and brings you up into this area here, which over the years I shall work on, and it's more than likely set to change. But again, it's an access, and it's an access to this area here, which I worked on at the beginning of this year. In fact, I started that over Christmas last year. So it's less than a year's old, and that is now the gravel garden. But that's a path leading you into it, and causing another reason to be. So What else we got? So that path then brings you into the seated area, and this path here is one of the first paths I did put in. So this here is the path that brings you in. Now initially this had no gate at all here. This was simply a hedge. It ran down there, so I took it out, put in the what we call the Lincolnshire post and rail, that rail fence, and we did that. So that was fine. So, but what I wanted was this area here. You're about to hear a car start behind me. My girlfriend's shooting off. Anyway, it all adds intrigue to the filming. Or not. Anyway, so that path brings you down here, and it brings you into what is fundamentally a seating area. This section here is a seating area. There's no seats there because we haven't got enough seats to go around, so depending what moods we're in, we move the seats around. And what that intended to do, when you sat on them, is it gives you that view there, which is of Grassy Bottom itself. And it's a nice view. But the path is what created that access to it. So there's a reason for it. It's not just stuck there for no reason whatsoever. Now, I guess you could call this an access path, this one here, and it's got a little bit of character to it. I'm about to put some gravel on this area. As I said, you can use different mediums to create your path, and I tend to use this hardcore, which is called MOT Type 1, and it's the one they use on roads. It's not cheap, but gives you the best finish. Now, although this isn't a path, this is kind of an access. This is an old grid that came off of a cellar from an old estate where they were removing it, and I reclaimed it and I use it for this section here. So it gives me access down to just observe this little grass here, which is currently 12 foot. And it gives me access to that, gives me access to get it up to it and to get in there and do the weeding, which I don't weed all the time, by the way. I've learned to tolerate some weeds, and that's just what I do. Now, again, an access path. So this access path, if the visitor was to come down here and unguided, they'd probably be guided by this path. So I wouldn't need to tell them where to go. A path would take them to where they want to go. And if it's not a path, then it's a point of interest they're looking for. So in this case, they'd probably look at the pergola, or they'd look at the path that leads you up to the shack, which is there. So the shack would be doing that trick for them. So that's looking nice, and it's bringing you onto this section again, and this'll draw them eventually, because this is set to be a wildlife area and a wildlife pond, or what I'm going to be calling a dip pool. But again, it's a path creating that. So we'll go back to this again. So this path draws you down, a reason for it being here. And these are simple grass paths, and if you're on a budget, it's the best way to go. Create yourself just a simple grass path. And along this run, I have 1, 2, 3, about 4 intersections, this being one of them. So it's another way of getting back round. So again, it's a path guiding you round. Now, if I put something like a solid base to this path, that would add even more interest. But on this occasion, I'm leaving it as grass because it brings you round to it and to there. So that's all points of interest. And then that takes you to the orchard. Well, I call it an orchard. There's only 3 fruit trees there, but nevertheless, it's an orchard in my opinion. And I keep it wild looking. I have hedgehogs now visiting this garden, so we've achieved something. And what it also does, when I take cuttings, I just simply leave them like that. The hedgehogs go underneath that and they shelter, and it's a great place to put them. When I'm digging out borders, I simply put them in clumps like this. I don't get worried about if it looks a mess or not, because that is going to break down into the most friable soil conditioner you can ever have. Now here we go. Here's a path leading you down. There's another path here. This one's made of slabs that were already here, and I've just reused them and forced it to go around the greenhouse itself and up to the shed. So that's a path serving a purpose. Paths that were already here, or steps rather, but it's technically a path. is this here. This is a set of steps, but it's a path leading you up to another area. Like that, and then it brings you into this area here, which we've not worked on properly, but again, around the front. So this is a path leading you up here. So it's got a purpose, and the purpose was to hold back this bank here, because this was falling. So again, it's a path, nevertheless. And it brings me to here, where I can sit down, I can survey my kingdom, and contemplate and think of what next job I'm going to be doing. Will it be another path? Probably. There's still spaces for paths. I still may interject into some of these borders to create paths past them, to take the viewer past them. And that would be good, and that would be nice. So, that's paths, the purpose. You can build them out of slabs, you can put old bricks down, old quarry tiles, you can put gravel paths, and you can use the cheapest method by far is just grass. Just cut to the shape of the path through the border and create that. But there's always reasons for it. Always reasons to put paths into something. And that's my reason. So I hope that's explained a little bit about paths. I'm not going to go into technicalities of how to build paths. Maybe I will at some point in the future. But for now, that's what I wanted to show you, the paths and where they lead you. They lead you into intrigue and interest. And one of my favourite paths at the moment is this path that takes you down to the secret garden. That isn't very secret at the moment, but this is bark chippings that are down here, and it takes you down to this area here, so you can sit there. And eventually, again, this will be blocked off, secluded, so it gives you a nice area, and you won't be able to see down there. But for now, we do get to see down here, and I kind of do what everybody else does. The point of desire is far easier to walk and step over that than it is to walk back up there and go round. But that would be boring long term. I'm here a lot, so I get to walk around this all the time. But once it brings you to this, you think, "Ooh, what's down there?" And it is quite interesting to the newcomer, to somebody who's never visited. And it's great, and I love it, and I love putting paths in. But always put a path in for a reason. So I hope that's helped. And if you've got any questions, any comments, feel free to fire them away at me. And just remember, this is my garden that I'm creating for myself, so it's kind of what I want and what works for me. And we're still working on it. I'll talk to you on the next one. Ta-da!